And I'm gonna tell you guys about myself a little bit. I'm gonna talk about Barton Heights history, Richmond history, and I'm gonna tell you about some resources that we have in the library. So, my name is Marvin Hicks, and I'm the Memory Fellow. The Richmond Public Library is the city's record holders, not only a space where people get books, but also literacy, obviously, but also community works. We're into history, especially things that are uniquely Richmond. So recently, the library was awarded a grant from the Mellon Foundation for $900,000 to expand Richmond's histories, especially those lectional histories. And so we have opened a memory lab down at the main library, as well as we have launched a digital archive, and we are in the process of digitizing a lot of the city records so that they can be available readily for everyone. So this is me, and this is Sarah, who also works in the memory lab. And those are some maps from the Parks and Recreation Department that we've sent off to Pennsylvania to be digitized. That should be ready and available soon. All right, so let's get into some of the history stuff. Does anybody know what this word means, or has anybody ever heard of this term before? Synacomico. Excuse me if I'm saying it wrong, because I'm not too sure how to pronounce it myself. So I got you. Well, Synacomico is a term that the indigenous people who first lived in this area had for the land. So instead of Virginia, they called it Synacomico. So it's the area between the James River and the Potomac River. And as you can see from this map, I think this is a 1607 map made by John Smith and Chris Report, one of the early guys. You can see all the different villages and different people groups on each of the rivers. Now, Synacomico was a paramount chiefdom, meaning that they had multiple chiefdoms, and they had one chief that was over everybody. And anybody guess who that chief was?
Powhatan.
Exactly. And does anybody know where Powhatan lived? No. Well, yes. yes, he did live in Powhatan. But not Powhatan County, which you may possibly be thinking of. Right here on the map, you see where the red star is Jamestown. Here's another map further up here, and there's a village called Powhatan. If we zoom in, we see further up the river from Powhatan, it says the falls, right? So Powhatan is modern day Fulton. So Powhatan's village is where Richmond is currently, right? So before even the Europeans came, this was a center of government, it was a center of power, it was a center of places where people gathered. In fact, Synacomico means a deeply inhabited area. So there were thousands of people here. So as you can see from the 1607 map, we have Powhatan, where Fulton is. You see this right here, Falls. Oh, there's a picture of Fulton, that's the hill. We have the Falls, which is downtown Richmond, between Nails Island and Belle Isle. We have Churchill, that bump right there. And that really is kind of the back of Chimborazo Hill. We have Gamble's Hill, which is where the new amphitheater is. Or if you're around my grandma's age, which none of you guys are, because she would be close to 95 now. You remember there used to be a castle at the top of the hill. So yeah, things change in Richmond, but the area stays the same. And right here where this tree is, we kind of where Barton Heights is. And right here, in between these two hills, is the valley where Richmond was started, right? The Chaco Valley. Does anybody know who's like the first family of Richmond, like the first family of sort of this area? It's a very common name in Virginia politics, especially in the past. No, you're close. One letter off. We have Birds. And this is William Byrd I. He's known in their family as the immigrant. He's the one that first came over to this land following an uncle from London, right? So, in 1673, he was granted 1,200 acres from the General Assembly on the fall line of Virginia of the James River, right? So that's going from parts of Charles City and Henrico to modern day Richmond. So all of this was a part of his property. This area was like strategic, like it was very strategic, right? You have the river, so you can put mills. You're in between two Native American groups, the Powhatans and the Monicans and the Piedmont, so you can kind of work them against each other in ways. You can start fur trading businesses, which is what he wanted to do. See, transition right here. And In 1675, he partnered with Nathaniel Bacon to start a fur trading business. Now, does the name Nathaniel Bacon sound familiar to anybody?
Yes,
Yes.
I forget why.
Yes. That too. Okay, so we have Bacon's Castle. In Richmond, we have Bacon's Quarter Branch, which is down that area, the Priest of Water. And also, we have Bacon's Rebellion. So, his partnership with Bacon ended a year later when Bacon's Rebellion happened. And the whole thing about Bacon's Rebellion is, and the way that we view history now, I personally think of it in a different way than people used to think of it. It used to be taught as a colonist rising up against like the colonial governments, but really they were rising up against the colonial government to take Native American lands. So Bacon was advocating pushing Native Americans out of Virginia, and all the other lowly colonists were with them, and they started a rebellion that was eventually squashed. So, with that, and then they burned Jamestown. That also happened. So after that whole kerfuffle happens, Burr continues his fur trading business, and he makes a lot of money. So much money that he's able to send his son, William Byrd II, to England to be educated, and he becomes like Virginia's merchant in London, selling tobacco, dealing with rates and prices and things like that. He had a plantation in Richmond known as Belvedere, which is where the street comes from, which is where the lookout point is. That their main home was Westover in Charles City, which is very palatial. When you think of the Byrds, especially at this time, you have to think of people like the Bridgertons. They're people who are lowly on like the gentry scale, and they're trying to show their money and show their force and say that they are somebody, right? Which is one of the reasons why the Byrds came to Virginia. So this is their home in Westover, which you can visit today. So, in 1737, William Byrd commissioned William Mayo, who was a surveyor, to create a town at the falls, to create actually multiple towns at the falls. So we have Richmond, which was here. We have Rocky Ridge, which is over where South Side is today, where Manchester is. And further up, you have West. So William Mayo, he left England at the age of 25 and to go to Barbados, where he became a surveyor, where he learned the surveying trade, and where he earned a lot of money. So much money and esteem from surveying that he became part of the Royal Society of London. So this is like a professional cartographer. He's also known for surveying Lord Fairfax's land, and Lord Fairfax is where Fairfax County comes from. He was the only member of like the landed British gentry that lived in the New World, which is kind of cool, in front of George Washington. He also divided the line. He also like surveyed the line between Virginia and North Carolina. So, and also, Mayo Bridge is part of his family's legacy. So like Mayo families are Richmond's second family. You have the Byrds, you have the Mayos. And everybody in the early Virginia and the early Richmond is all intermarried and related to both of these families. So Mayo served as the civil engineer of Richmond until his death in 1744. And again, his family is one of the premier families of the area. And this is the original map of Richmond. You can see it. It's a little faded. It's a little small too. But there are 32 blocks here. And there are bigger blocks in the villas for like the richer folk, right? And all of Richmond is east of the Chaco Creek here. Does anybody know where this area of Richmond is today? Or does anybody ever even know where the Chaco Creek is?
Churchill is supposed to be like the first center of Richmond,
Yes.
right? And so is this like Richmond Henrico Turnpike-ish, or like?
No. You're close though. Churchill is right.
Okay.
And it is a turnpike.
Chaco Creek ran through Chaco Valley.
Yes.
And that's why it floods all the time when it rains.
So underneath of 95 is where the Chaco Creek is. So all of Richmond, like you said, Churchill was 32 blocks east of Churchill. East of the valley. So east of the creek. There we go. And it ended about at 26th Street. So it becomes a town. In 1739, the Henrico Parish Church moves from Verina to Richmond, and they established, and that was the center of like the state religion. So like they documented baptisms, births, deaths, things like that. So kind of like the center of the government in a way, of religious life, moved to Richmond. In 1742, the General Assembly officially gave it a town status, and the Henrico County government moved into the center. In 1775, the Second Virginia Convention met here, and Patrick Henry gave his famous "Give Me Liberty" or "Give Me Death" speech, and which became a hotbed of the American Revolution. In 1780, the General Assembly removes the state capital from Williamsburg and moves to Richmond. And for the next 100 years, the city grows and grows. We are a place where a lot of the early political figures of America resided before they went on to the federal governments, before they left to Washington. Thomas Jefferson lived here, Patrick Henry lived here. So it's a pretty big place when it comes to early American history. So going with that growth of Richmond, here's a map from around the Civil War. Here you see Fulton's there, the Falls are there, Churchill's there, Jackson Ward is here. This is from the Civil War, so you see the outward fortifications around the city, as well as the inner fortifications right there. If you zoom in even more, you see you have Jackson Ward here. If you can see very closely, which I doubt you guys can, you have the Chapel Hill Cemetery. That's Chapel Hill, that means this is 3rd Street, 2nd Street, 1st Street, St. James Street. You got the valley, and you have this road going up, right? Now if you know, which I assume you guys know, because you guys live here, St. James is what it's called when you're on the hill, you go down into the valley, you come up the hill, you have North Avenue. So, right here, St. James Street is, right here, where St. James Street is, you see there's a hill, there's a mound. And right as you come up the hill at that mound, you will see there, Barton Heights cemeteries. So the Barton Heights cemetery started in 1815. Groups of free African Americans banded together their money to purchase land, to be able to bury their dead respectfully in the ways that they deemed necessary. Compared to some other cemeteries in the city, you have the Chapel Bottom Cemetery, which was sadly forgotten. You have the Chapel Hill Cemetery, which also was sadly forgotten. But the Barton Heights Cemetery, though there are no burials today, is one of the ones that has been saved and preserved. So you have the Burial Ground Society, known as the Phoenix Burial Society, which is later known as Cedarwood, and that's the first cemetery, which was here. And then throughout time, different groups brought more and more land to create bigger cemeteries. So you have Cedarwood, you have the Methodist Cemetery, you have the Ebenezer Cemetery, which is connected to Ebenezer Baptist Church. You have the Sycamore Cemetery, you have the Sons and Daughters of Ham Cemetery, as well as the Union Mechanic Cemetery. And these cemeteries start in 1815, and as time goes on, they keep growing. So you have some that are established before the Civil War, and others that are established after. And it makes sense too, because Jackson Ward is one of the blackest areas of Richmond at the time, right? And all these people live on the hill. What's at the bottom of the hill is the city line. So across where the cemetery is wasn't a part of Richmond City, it was on the outskirts of town.
When you say outskirts of town, was it a township?
No, it was legitimately the outside of town. So it was across the city line. So it was the beginning of like the rural Henrico. So you have like villas and like little farms, but it's not really developed in the way that the city is developed.
So, no,
and especially because too, it's in the valley, so it's not land that people necessarily want because it's coming right up that hill. And like you said, the valley floods. Because especially at that point, the creek starts going. So in this burial ground, you have very prominent figures like D. Webster Davis, who was a teacher at Davie Hill School, which was the first school that had hired black teachers. He was a poet, which you can buy it, still gets poetry. And he was a reverend in the South Side. You have Josiah Crump, who was a 10-year city council person in the 1800s. He's a black man who was a city council person in like the 1880s through 1890s. And I didn't even realize that there were black city councilmen in Richmond in this time period. And he was also a quartermaster of the 1st Colored Battalion, Virginia Volunteers, which was a local militia. You have Lucy Good Brooks, who was the founder of the Friends Orphanage. She was a social reformer and she was a civic leader. After the Civil War, there were a lot of children who didn't have parents, and she and the Quaker societies, they all banded together to create an orphanage in Richmond for black children. And this orphanage still survives to this day in Gilpin Court. It's known as Friends Association, and it's a daycare. It tends to children's needs, mothers' needs, and it's community centered to this day. You have people like Joseph E. Farrar, who was a contractor and literally built Jackson Ward. He was the founder of the Colored Men's Equal Rights League and the Virginia Home Building Fund and Loan Association that was a fund to give black people homes. You have the famous John Jasper, who was the pastor of 6 Mount Zion Baptist Church. He was basically a mega pastor before there were mega pastors. He was famous in the white and the black world for his the Sun Do Move speech sermon. He didn't believe that the earth moved around the sun. He believed that the sun moved around the earth. It was a very famous sermon. And you have people like Gilbert Hunt, who was the hero of the 1811 Richmond Theater fire. In 1811, one of the theaters burns, and all the rich, famous people in Richmond are inside stuck. He literally goes into the building and he's saving people. You would think for this he would be freed. He was not. He actually had 2 owners after this, and he eventually purchased his freedom for $800. He became a famous, notable blacksmith, and he was a colonist to Liberia. And before the Civil War, there was a belief that America couldn't be a multiracial nation. So they were like, well, if black people are freed, let's send them back to Africa. And so they started the country of Liberia, which was an American colony where they sent formerly freed slaves to establish the land. Gilbert Hunt goes for 8 months. He returns to Richmond and he tells everybody, don't go. And he was a deacon at the First African Baptist Church, and he was a founder of the Union Burial Ground Society. So one of the Barton Heights cemeteries, he was a founder of. And here are pictures of the cemetery from the inside. It became city-run in 1930, and since then the city has kept up maintenance for years, and to this day there are Whit Monday celebrations where people who are descended of these people come to the cemetery to grieve their dead, to celebrate their dead, celebrate life, and celebrate their histories. All right, so those are the Barton Heights Cemetery. So that's at the bottom of the hill, right here. Then right here on the map, you see you have Battery number 8, right? Now, this is Barton Heights. There is a Battery Street. Across North Avenue, you have Battery Park. You guys ever think that's where the name came from? Confederate Battery. So here's North Avenue. Here you see you have the Barton Heights cemeteries. Here you have a failed land scheme called Douglasville. There were no houses were built. You have the Graham's property here. You have the Dove's property there. So Dove Street comes from the Dove Farm. And you have Fort Curian here as well. So here we have an ad from 1862. It's hard to see. I'll try to read it to the best of my ability for you guys. And it's Dove selling some of his land. It says, beautiful suburban residents. I will sell or exchange for city property my little farm of 30 or more acres within half a mile of the city on the new North Road, being a portion of the Mitchell Spring Tract. There is on it a handsome brick Venetian cottage containing 9 rooms, stable, outhouses, and a great variety of beautiful shrubbery, and an orchard of about 1,000 fruit trees. Choicest kinds, peaches, plums, apricots, apples, nectarines, cherries, etc., including 400 dwarf pears, rare grapes, strawberries, and other berries. A stream of water runs through the place from which a large pond may be made, and on each side several outhouses may be built, and each side filled. There's also near the stream another brick house of 7 rooms, and the place is susceptible of being divided into 2 little nice farms. I will sell on long credit and on the lively terms. Samuel E. Dove. So, it sounds very idyllic. Lots of fruit trees, lots of fruit in this area. So that's 1862, right? During the Civil War. At the same time, where he's living here, there's a fortification across the road. All right, so we have an overlay of the modern map here. You have North Avenue here. You have Graham Road, you have Battery Street. So you have Miller Avenue, the park right there. And the Battery, as far as I think it is, because I could be wrong, but it's somewhere in this general region. Be on this side of North or that side of North. We know the Battery opening is here because it's Battery Street. So, here's an ad from, here's a news article from during the war. Struck by lightning. The camp at Battery number 8 near Richmond was struck by lightning early yesterday morning. Privates F. Willis, S. White, and T. Tomlin of the company stationed on the Battery were severely shocked. Major Atkinson was slightly shocked. So this battery was manned by the 19th Battalion Virginia Heavy Artillery. And they were also known as Atkinson's Battery. Atkinson was Colonel John Wilder Atkinson, and he was actually the son of the Episcopal Bishop of North Carolina. who was also a descendant of William Mayo. So they were part of Richmond's second family. And he was in Richmond as a tobacco merchant during the war, and after the war, he went to Wilmington, North Carolina, where he also continued the tobacco trade. So there are about 500 men who were in this battery, and they were trained as infantry and armed with muskets. They were involved in Richmond's defense at Brooks Turnpike at Drury Bluff, which is where Confederate Avenue used to be. It's now Brennan Park Avenue, but there was another battery there. And so they were involved in that battle as well. And they were captured at Sailor's Creek on April 6, 1865. All right, so we have Confederate history. We have some Black history. We have Jackson Ward, St. James Street, Barton Heights Cemeteries, battery number 8. And we have where you guys are, North Barton Heights. So we're kind of moving up North Avenue. So does anybody know why Barton Heights is called Barton Heights? No? Yes. Mr. James H. Barton. This is the guy. He was the proprietor of Barton Heights. He was from Pennsylvania. He had lived in Little Rock, Arkansas, because the Union Army brought him down there, and he started housing development down there. Here's an ad from a paper in Little Rock. James H. Barton, real estate agent. Nice 2-story house, 8 rooms, corner lot, 4 blocks from the streetcars. So he really liked the ideas of suburban places, close to streetcar lines, where you're out in the country, but you can easily get back into the city. He established his home at Corner Minor, which is now also known as the Barton Mansion. So this is his house, and he lived there. Here's it today. Here's a San Moore map. It's hard to see, but you can see it goes all the way down the hill. There's fountains and everything down there.
There's what down?
Fountains. There were fountains. And it was a really nice property. It went all the way down the hill. So from here, there were all he built a real estate development. Built a town, really. It was a town. So there were many architectural styles that came throughout time, such as Victorian, we have multifamily dwellings, we have American Foursquare, which is typical, and we also have modern ranch style homes. So we have some ads here. Barton Heights, 40 beautiful residences built and contracted for. Bus line, 4 times a day for post office. The summer outing worked wonders for the children. Why not give them an all year round outing at Barton Heights? Go to James H. Barton, 922 East Main Street. And people moved here. Here's an article from the paper. Dance at the Heights. The Barton Heights Athletic and Municipal Association gave another one of their delightful dances at the Wigwam last Friday night. The ladies were Mrs. Lamb, Mrs. Gay, Mrs. Harvey, Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Shelbourne, Mrs. Minor, Mrs. Hattie O'Bannon, Mrs. Jackson, Mrs. Beach, Mrs. Ross, Mrs. Barton, Mrs. Graham, Mrs. Nail, Mrs. Fox, Mrs. Taylor, Mrs. Snyder. Everyone was there. You had to be at the Wigwam. Here's another article. Barton Heights gossip. Mr. and Mrs. F.H. Knott of Brooklyn Park tendered their little daughter Marie a charming birthday party Thursday evening. Among the various amusement was a donkey party, which was greatly enjoyed by all present, especially the winners Shelton and Knuckles. Delicious refreshments were served. Those presents were Alice and Bertha Carter, Louise and Ruth Taylor, Bonafel, Henri. Really, you just had to be there. And there were more articles, specifically about people who lived here. Mrs. Goldland is out of town. She's visiting her sister. Mrs. Gardner, who has been ill, is reported much better. Mrs. Annie Laurie Pitt, who has been quite ill, is convalescing. And Mrs. Jones of Louisa is visiting relatives in Brooklyn Park. We have civic organizations formed. We have lectures on Rome, right? The entertainment committee of the Barton Heights Catholic Club will give the second and concluding lecture of the short series on the general topic of Rome, Wednesday. There's even a bank. Northside branch is open. Harper LaFoon will manage new Interpark Association. The building was erected at a cost of $40,000 and replaced a branch that has been operating for some time on North Avenue near the boulevard. You guys know where that is?
Oh yeah.
Or is it the other building?
Over this way. It's Smoky Bug's new building.
Yeah, that building.
Yeah, which was also, when I was a child, my dentist's office. Dr. Hackey used to be on the second floor. So I remember walking up the very steep stairs, especially like this tall. They were really steep. So Barton Heights grew as a town. But all of this was despite Mr. Barton. Why is that? Mr. James H. Barton fails. He files a deed of assignment with liabilities placed at $17,000. Property conceived in creditors. regrets of his neighbors. You see here, if you can see it. You would see that it's all the people of the town that you heard earlier. They're all convening like, why? What's going on? Mr. Barton has left us the deeds and he has skipped town. The affairs of Mr. Barton. No tidings have been received from Mr. James H. Barton for the past few days. There was also no new developments in his business transactions here yesterday. Mr. W.R. Miller, Miller Avenue, South Miller, right? Miller, one of Barton's receivers, has moved the furniture and fixtures of Mr. Barton's office on Main Street to Mr. E.A. Catlin's office. He's gone. Mr. Barton's whereabouts. The RICO officials have as yet no clue as to the whereabouts of Mr. James H. Barton. He had some transactions in this city years ago, and I said, they think he went back down to Little Rock. They talked to a guy there, and he was like, we haven't seen him. He had some business here years ago, but nobody's seen him yet. And so they assure us that once they do find him, he will be brought to justice. So basically what happened was, he was selling lots twice. It was a Ponzi scheme. He was selling lots and using the money to build the houses for all the previous buyers. So, once he got found out, he left Richmond and he left his wife as well. He completely left town. Mrs. Barton has heard from him and she says that he says he's on his way back. But unfortunately, that didn't happen and Mrs. Barton left town. She went to live with her sister, Mrs. Lamb, in New York, and the paper assures us that there's no ill feeling towards her. She was a very nice lady and we all like her very well. And this is an article from the Richmond Planet, which was the Black Planet paper at the time, written by James Mitchell Jr. As you can read, it says, James H. Barton, who established a white settlement north of the city and refused to allow any colored residents to live within its confines, has walked away with what is estimated to be $30,000 of other people's money. It's about $1,175,000 today. His return is anxiously awaited by his deluded victims and curses from former Christian households and weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth from the Negro haters. It's a common occurrence upon the avenues of this revenue-sacked village. And so ends the role of prejudice. And Mr. Barton there's a lot of shade here, right? But it's well due, because as Barton Heights became a town, the black people weren't allowed to move over here, which is true. And also, the town tried their hardest to remove the Barton Heights cemeteries. They claimed that there was a smell coming from the cemeteries, that the cemeteries were overfilled, right? And the black people at the time, the people who lived in Jackson Ward, the people who have been burying their dead there for at least 100 years, all convened and come together and said, no. The reason it smells is because the city's crematorium also sits on this hill, and the smell is wafting over into your settlement. We're not going to remove our people from these places. This goes on from March 1896, which is the year that Mr. Barton leaves. 10 years later, another conversation where the town of Barton Heights is using their city lawyer to go against these cemeteries. And again, in 1910, can't use grave except for one. Barton Heights gets favorable report on bill to stop cemetery congregation. But at each step, the folks of Jackson Ward and Richmond fought. As you can see here, here's an ad that says they want to close the colored burial grounds. The town council of Barton Heights last evening held an interesting meeting. The ordinance was reported by the ordinance committee were revised and amended. The council instructed the town attorney, Mr. W.H. Beveridge, to take civil action as he deemed proper to protect the town from a nuisance of the Negro burial ground. And then at the bottom here, it says, if you have anyone buried in this ground, if you care about this cause, meet us at the 3rd Street Methodist Church, which also was a member of that cemetery, as they had the Methodist cemetery there as well. And because of this, and because of the states of the burial grounds around the city, John Mitchell Jr., who also is the owner of the paper, he establishes in Northside Woodland Cemetery. And he thinks of it as a black alternative to Hollywood Cemetery, like Evergreen Cemetery it was at the time as well. And he urged people to go to Woodland, because we don't know how long those cemeteries will be there. The Shockwell Hill Cemetery, which was on Hospital Street and 5th, got dug up for the widening of the road and then forgotten about, and it's not until 2019 that we all collectively remembered that it was there. So most of the prominent people that were buried at the Barton Heights Cemetery were exhumed and reburied at Woodland Cemetery. For instance, you see here, John Jasper remains to be removed, and he held a beautiful second funeral for him at the new cemetery. And this is all around 1920. And Woodland Cemetery is visible today. Are there ashes buried there? And there's a lot of works to keep it open and to keep it well managed to this day. And here we see there was a governor's race, the two governors of Virginia in 1921. One of the candidates, Colonel Anderson, he gave a speech here in Barton Heights where he says, "If I am elected governor in Virginia, no Negro will ever hold office in this state under my administration." Speech given directly in this town and neighborhood. So Mr. Mitchell was right to be a bit shady in the way that he talked about the Barton Heights folks losing their money. So let's talk about some other Barton Heights families. Let's make it a little lighter. So let's talk about the Stiegletters. Headed by Nick Stiegletter, they were a second-generation American family, with Nick's father coming from Germany. He originally settled in Massachusetts before they bought a farm in Allen Springs. But Nick, he didn't really like the farm. So he took his family and they moved to Richmond, and they settled in Churchill. And after they lived in Churchill for a while, he moved to Barton Heights, and he started a cement rock business. Have you seen our brownstone or sandstone waterproof cement building blocks? If you're going to build, let N.J. Stiegletter & Son give you an estimate on building our foundation. He lives in this neighborhood. He has a rock quarry on the corner down the street. And his rocks, these cement buildings, are the rocks that built the foundations of your homes. He had his children were model citizens. One became an electric contractor and he sold motors. His daughter went to Virginia State Normal College, which is JMU nowadays, and she became a teacher, and she even was talked about in the Times Dispatch. So pretty good family. During the war, he petitioned the city to be able to fly a ginormous American flag on his property. Because of their last name, you can see that they're very German. And during the war, you didn't really want to be associated with Germany in America. So he was granted that ordinance. And on his yard, there was a ginormous American flag to prove how American they were. The next family we'll talk about are the Kings. Headed by James Edward and his wife Princess, the Kings came to Richmond from West Virginia. James worked for the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad for 54 years. He started as a contractor, as a carpenter, and he worked his way up. He was the director of the American Bridge and Building Association. He was a member of the American Railway Association. He was a member of the Commonwealth Club, the Country Club. He was just a pretty big known guy. He was a person that you would want to know and get a recommendation from. His wife Princess, she was also pretty big. She was influential in her own right. Two of her brothers were professors, and her sister was a doctor in the 30s, so that's pretty cool. She was a teacher in West Virginia before she married her husband, and she also was a teacher in Oklahoma in 1906 to 1907. She was a leading civil figure. She was the regent of the William Byrd chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. She was their publicity chair, their program chair, the nomination chair. She held their meetings in her home in this community. She also served as the president of the Republican Women's Club, the Every Monday Club. She was a member of the League of Women Voters, the Richmond Citizens Association, the Good Park Women's Club, the Comedy Club. She just was in every club. She was also the mother-in-law of an Olympic figure skater who also lived in this neighborhood. And in 1938, she welcomed her friend Maribel Vincent, another Olympic figure skater, to dinner at her home. She and her son James Jr. went to Europe in June of 1939, and they returned in September of 1939 because the war broke out. And they were on the George Washington steamer. So this is a picture of them as they were off to Europe, now when they came back. And she was the only woman considered to be a delegate at the Constitutional Convention that would have granted voting rights to servicemen after World War II. And she was also a member of the Republican National Convention, and she was one of the people who elected Eisenhower to be the Republican candidate. Another family, we have the Feldens. In the 1950s, the racial makeup of this area was changing, with many of the more prominent white people who started the town moving to other neighborhoods and venturing north of Brooklyn Park and further west. And at the same time, Jackson Ward and Navy Hill were being destroyed by I-95 and urban renewal projects. So this led to a natural migration of people moving further north and west, white people moving further north and west, and black people moving further north and west into their own homes. So in 1950, 1951, you have the Founders. Leon and Cora Fowler rebuilt their lives in Barton Heights after their home was taken because of the construction of the Richmond and Henrico Turnpike. Leon was a cook. He was a cook in hotels and rich people's homes around the city. Both of them came from different counties around Richmond, and they both came in around the 1920s to build their family. And they raised 3 sons, 2 daughters, a foster son and a foster daughter in their home in Barton Heights. Also, their father-in-law, Leon's father-in-law, Archer, lived with them as well. They held weddings at their homes, which were reported in the Afro-American, which was one of the greater black newspapers of the country. They had society visits. They were in the newspaper answering questions. Like, for instance, one time Mrs. Belden, there was like a cherry scandal, like a cherry juice scandal for some reason. Nobody knew if it was safe or not to drink cherry juice. Mrs. Belden said, because everybody's skeptical, we just aren't going to drink the cherry juice either. And that was documented. But everything wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. In 1951, their daughter Marie unfortunately drowned in Hampton Institute. 2,300 people attended her funeral at Fifth Street Baptist Church. As you can see, it was a well-attended event. They were very much loved, and you just see that they were pretty prominent in their community. And everybody feels riled by the accidental death of their tragedy. But despite this, the Fowdens resided in their address until they passed away, and it was always a spot of togetherness and memories. Now, I will tell you guys this. All 3 of these families all lived in the same house. Yes. So it's the leaders, and then the Kings, and then the Fowdens. So, as I said, these places are spots for memories. The Fowdens may remember the godmother of rock and roll, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who lived on Barton Avenue, which is a little known fact that nobody tends to know, and there's no marker on her home or anything, but for 10 years, she lived right here in Richmond in this neighborhood. Or they could be memories like Miss Swan has. If I can play this video. It's a little different. But Miss Swan, she was one of the people who integrated Chandler High School. It was you can see her picture in the Times-Dispatch of her and another young lady walking up the stairs, and there's an interview on Oral History where she talks about the hell that she went through. She said it was not an easy process. She said that everybody in the community moved into, her old community had moved into this new community, and they opened the schools to them, and she and the other young lady were courageous enough, their families were courageous enough to send them. And through day after day, she fought and she fought. And things didn't necessarily get better for her at the moment, but she understood how her sacrifice, her trials made.
The neighborhood was wonderful. It was a kind of cocoon where everyone watched out for everyone else's children. So even if you were out of the line of sight of your parents, someone was watching, which could be a positive thing for your parents, but you couldn't get away with anything. My parents never discussed the reasons for the restrictions that we had to endure. So if we sat on the back of the bus, that was because my mother wanted to sit there. If I wanted to have a hot dog at Woolworth's, she said, we have food at home. So when the civil rights movement came along, it was like falling off a cliff. All of a sudden, things were just as they were because your parents said they were. And then you were involved. My parents were walking picket lines. My father was self-employed. He owned Abe's Grill and Abe's Seafood Grill, and that was two very popular black restaurants. He didn't have to worry so much about his employment because of what he was doing. Because our parents weren't of the generation that said, we're going to just sit down and discuss this with you, we're going to explain it to you and see if this is something you want to do. It was, the meetings that they had did not include us, so we knew that they were going to meetings, but we really weren't aware of what the meetings were about. We were 3 blocks from Chandler, and Gloria lived 5 blocks from Chandler. So it was really easy walking distance, although honestly, my parents were so afraid we never walked. But the distance was the main thing. And then the facilities, you didn't know that they were unequal until you had an opportunity to see them. And then, it really was very different. Once the application was accepted, we were told, this is what's going to happen, this is where you'll go to school next year, and the behavioral expectations, which were reinforced quite a bit by Reverend Elgin, by my parents, by strangers. And that was really frightening because it seemed like, I felt like the whole race was depending on what we were going to do there. The first day of school, obviously, I was terrified, so I think I was just going on automatic. My father and Gloria's mother accompanied us, and we got out of the car. It was a block, a kind of dead-end block that ran along the side of Chandler, and we started walking towards the school. And at the other end of the block were lots of reporters. And so they started running at us as we were walking towards them. And that was really, like facing a herd of marauding buffalo. That was very frightening. And when we got to the corner, then we were on our own. Our parents didn't go any further. We had had a meeting with the principal, and he had said that we should come a half an hour after the bell. So everyone else was in the building already. And I guess that's why all the pictures showed just us and the detectives that were following us. And in the school, there were detectives in suits posted at various points in the school, I guess, to maintain order. And as long as they were there, order was maintained. But they were there for about 2 weeks. And then once they were gone, people felt free to torture us, and they did. There was a thing about contamination, and that meant that someone couldn't sit in the seat that you had occupied, or their friends would start yelling at them. I don't know whether they thought that they were going to start turning black. That seemed to be the general consensus. If you accidentally touched someone, they'd begin screaming for someone to brush them off. When you went to an assembly, no one sat next to you, behind you, in front of you, so you had a ring of empty seats around you. Lunch and gym were the 2 most horrible times of the day. Lunch because milk cartons that weren't empty would be thrown at you, so when they hit you, you'd be splashed with milk or juice or whatever was in those cartons. And gym, this was when there was President Kennedy's physical fitness challenge, and you were supposed to do so many sit-ups, but someone had to hold your feet. So that was a major problem. In my science class, we went on a field trip to the quarry to look for rocks. And it was a hot day, and on the way back, they stopped at, just a little roadside store to get sodas and use the bathroom, and the owners of the store wouldn't let us come in. So those kinds of things went on, the entire year. When we met with the principal, he said, if you ignore people who are calling you names or doing these, various little tortures to you, they'll get bored and they'll stop. That's not the case. They never got bored, they never stopped. It continued, the whole year. And on into John Marshall, since the following year we had to do the same thing all over again because this was a feeder school for John Marshall. So it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. Interestingly enough, I've gotten an email from someone who said that her father was one of the police officers in the picture walking behind us. I got an email from someone who apologized that they participated in that. I got an email and a book from someone who felt badly that he hadn't stepped up to defend us, or even to befriend us. And people that did befriend us were called nigger lovers. And if they sat with us at lunch, they of course suffered the same kinds of tortures that we were suffering. And they had to decide whether they wanted to take the risk of being identified as a nigger lover, or and most people were reluctant to take the risk. I know now that everyone wasn't just cold-hearted and evil. At Chandler, I don't remember too many teachers as being horrible. They just kind of ignored us, and they didn't see anything that was going on. So they allowed these misbehaviors by other students by just ignoring it. And there were some teachers who took it out on you in terms of your grade, and some teachers who were so bold as to tell your parents that that's why. When you got to that part in your history books about slavery, I would get hot. I think I would start sweating. Everyone would start looking at you. And the book said that slaves were treated really well because, after all, they were like, if you had a thoroughbred racehorse, that was a financial investment, and it was to your advantage to make sure that slave had good food, good clothing, didn't work too hard, that they had comprehensive unemployment benefits because they didn't have to worry about ever being unemployed. They didn't have to worry about where their next meal was coming from. And this is in a book. When it was time to go to college, I wanted to get as far away from the South as I could. I really wanted to go to California, but my mother said no, that was too far away. I went to college in Maine, which I guess was as far as I could get, and stay on the East Coast. And then when I went back to be a teacher, I was in an upper middle class district. I was teaching special ed. And I noticed that, kids got along pretty well. It was like, would you come to my bar mitzvah? Would you come to my baptism? Those cultural things were shared. And it wasn't a big problem until the district started tipping. And when it started tipping to be overwhelmingly a black district, then you didn't have that same interaction between the races that you did when, it was more equal. And, that was discouraging to me because then what's the answer? It is a failed social experiment in the sense that there was so much hope, certainly in the black community, that this was going to bring a sense of equality, a sense of fairness, that things would be more equal. And that didn't happen. And now, I can't imagine with this current administration how those students are getting along at all, because you're just so empowered to be negative and to express your negativity very, very loudly. What can you do to make our country less polarized? And it is so polarized that it's really frightening. But it's sad because it's like we went through all of that with such hopes for the future. And I'm not going to say all of those hopes were not realized, because there are things that, we are able to do now, things that we have access to now that we didn't then. but it wasn't realized in the complete way that we envisioned it, that we hoped for. And I don't know what the answer is.
Things better for the future. So, how can you guys preserve your memories? Richmond Public Library's Memory Lab. All right, so what is the Memory Lab? The Memory Lab is a space for, there we go. The Memory Lab is a space for personal digitization. So if you guys have any photographs, if you have any VHS tape, cassette tapes, any type of older formats that you may just have lying around in the basement that you want to keep and preserve for the future, we have the technologies to help you all preserve those things for free. There are services online such as Ancestry Preserve, sorry, I'm looking at the camera when I say that, which costs about $299 to do that, where you send all of your things, they digitize it for you. But at the library, we have a DIY model that's all for free. You don't even need a library card to come. So upon that, as you can see, it's a beautiful room. It used to be the children's library at the main library. So if any of you are from Richmond and you went to the library before, I believe, 2004, you may have memories in that space. So a lot of people, when they come down, they look at the books on the walls, which are also filled with children's books, old and rare children's books, and they look around and they say, huh, I've been down here before, I remember it here. So it's kind of like a full circle when you're here as a child and you come back as an older adult to preserve those memories. As you can see here, here's a typical Memory Lab station. We have a flatbed scanner that can digitize slides, negatives, and photos, as well as documents. We can digitize VHS, Betacam, Betamax. What else? We can do cassettes, obviously. We can do, if you have any of those camcorders, so like high 8 cassettes, if you have mini DV, we can help you with that as well. We have a book scanner to help you digitize books, if you have anything, delicate things, art, bigger pieces like that. And we even have reel-to-reel audio, 16 millimeter, 8 millimeter, and super 8 millimeter. So any formats that you may have, we have technologies to help you keep those. Now, and we even have personal archiving kits, which are here, which are cameras, portable scanners, tripods, microphones, everything that you need to make videos or oral history projects. We have the technologies for free for you all to check out and do anything with those projects. Because again, one of our purposes is to expand Richmond's knowledge of lesser known histories. And those lesser known histories are the histories that we all hold and share. They're the histories of parties, of pictures in basements and garages, of people that you don't know, like those people on the Barton Heights gossip columns, right? Those are all histories that we want to keep and maintain and share for the future, because if we have those histories, then people will know actually what Richmonders think and what Richmonders want, as compared to the past when we're told what people want. So we have our digital archive, which again was recently launched. It, at the moment, has about 2 more collections that I'll show here. We have RPL history, we have the Parks and Recs department, which is Parks and Recs department, pictures going from about 1900 to the present. So you guys may be in some of these pictures, so go through it and see if you can find yourself. We have our monuments collection, which is about the removal of the monuments on Monument Avenue. At the moment, it has very city focused. It has interviews from LeVar Stoney and his cabinet. It has emails for the removals. It has emails against the removals. It has all the papers associated with the removals. And in the fall, we will be going to each of the library branches and we'll be doing oral history projects regarding the monuments and seeing and getting a collection of what the people of Richmond thought at that time in 2020. Pre-2020, post-2020, about the monuments, about their removals. We even have a video on there of the monuments in their current state, and you can see how they are arranged, you can see where they are, and we have an interview with Jenny Welliver, who was in charge of that removal. And one of our most important collections, in my opinion, I hope in your opinion, are our community lab contributions. So when you come to the Memory Lab, you all have the option to donate digital materials that are related to Richmond history. So if you have a picture from a UCrop's Christmas Festival one year, or if you have something from the Strawberry Festival and you want to donate it, you can. And you retain all rights to it. It's your photo. You can take it down at any moment in time. We just want to have a place where Richmonders feel empowered to share their own histories and have a platform to do that. We are working with different community organizations, such as different churches like First African Baptist Church. And they're creating collections of their histories so that people are able to go and see them. We have people like Theodore Holmes, who is a documentary photographer in Richmond. He lives in Jackson Ward. And in the 90s, he just took a lot of pictures of the destruction of buildings on Broad Street for the 6th Street Marketplace and things like that. So he has a collection over here of 31 pages full of photos of old Richmond. So if you guys feel compelled to donate anything, or if you guys just want to come to the Memory Lab and just save some of your old tapes and family portraits and things like that, please come. We have, it's a DIY model. We recommend appointments. Appointments are 4 hours long, but there is always somebody in the room there to help you. So sometimes you're there the whole time, or sitting next to you, and just pressing buttons with you. Sometimes people get it on their own, and we're just on the other end of the room. If they need anything, they call us. But it's all for you guys. It's all for free, and we employ Yes.
I want to tell you, do you know what the biggest selling point for Barton Heights was? To get all the people.
I would say one would be the streetcar. But
That's it, right there.
There you go.
That was the main selling point.
Yes, sir.
Streetcar line ran out at Barton Heights.
Yes, sir. It was easy to work in the city, right, and do business in the city. To go out into the country where you have clean air, you can have your family, like the ad said, you can have that country type of living in the city like we exist. So, and in a way, Barton Heights still has that, right? We're still, even though we're part of the city, I'm from Allen Park, so I'll come and say we. Even though we're a part of the city, we still have a little bit of that like suburban character, a little bit of that feel, but very urbanness. So that's what we're us. Yes.
Can we contribute pictures from home, or do we have to come into the Memory Lab?
Good question. If I'll give you my card,
Okay.
and we have a form that you have to fill out. If you fill out that form,
Yeah.
and you email it to us, I don't see why.
Cool. Can you search? I'm sorry.
Sure. You go.
I just wonder if you could search by address, or like, because you had pictures of like specific houses. Like, could I see the history of my house and like who's been there? Before?
No, but if you come to the Richmond room, we can help you with that. So the Richmond room is our home for Central Virginia history, right? So we have different city directories. We have all types of books that deal specifically with Richmond and Richmond history. One of the goals, one of our parameters is it has to be Richmond related. It has to be based upon Richmond for us to collect things, and also for things to be in this room. Central Virginia also counts in this space. But we have all the newspapers. We have what else do we have? Directories, newspaper, microfilm, books, anything that you can need, and we can start you on your journey. We have freeancestry.com when you're in the libraries. Also in the Memory Lab, if you guys need it, we have Photoshop, Premiere Pro, Adobe, Creative Cloud, any of the editing software. So if you ever need to just edit something, you can come into the Memory Lab just for editing. But any history research, you can come to us and we'll help you on your journey, and we can help you. If you don't have anything, we'll send you to LBA, or we'll send you to BMHC or the Black History Museum, and we'll help you start your journey. That's one of the things we always say is that the library has one of the lowest barriers of entry, and we're open more longer than most institutions. So it's a great place to come and start. It's a great place for other people to be because everybody's here, and we're always open for the most part. And here's a picture of the Richmond room. It's on the second floor. It was the second home of the children's library. So when I was a child, I remember being in the memory lab, and then they went upstairs, and I was confused a little bit because the rooms looked very similar. There you can see my colleague Charlie. He's our law librarian. The Richmond room is also the home of our law library, where you have free access to Westlaw. You also have free access to Westlaw, Ancestry, and all of these places in this library as well. So always remember that if you're on our Wi-Fi, you have access to a lot of things. And if you have a library card, you have access to even more things. So I think that's my time.